Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester news, Man United news and transfer news this Thursday, the 11th of December 2026. How are we all doing? We've got lots to get into this morning. Conor Gallagher talks begin. What are your thoughts about that? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of reaction. Zirkzee may be leaving again, despite a story last night that he wasn't. Napoli's director of football, I think, has been talking about Mainoo, and Man United are linked to 2 more youngsters. At what point do you stop saying Favel is cooking and start saying United are just clearly following a model here of accumulating young players so they can sell them on for profit? Because we're not a club that develops young players. So I see all these hipster fans on X going, oh my God, United are cooking. We're about to sign another 16-year-old that could be the next Kante. And I'm like, when was the last time we produced the next Wes Brown? You know, we don't develop talent. So why are we buying all these young players that we can't develop because we haven't got the players to do it? Are we buying them because they'll be worth money in the future? Probably. Anyway, that's my opinion on that. Lots to get into this morning, as I said. But we're going to start off with our story. It's a long time since we've had this. And look, call bullshit, call it what you like. I've just spent the last 2 days moaning about Man United not doing business in January because we're not a proper football club, because the Glazers and Ineos are poison, because they haven't got a clue how to run a football club. So, you know, there's no reason for this to be out there other than it's coming from a good source. Now, we have had good information leading up to last summer transfer window and through it numerous times. We were one of the first to say that Collie would be leaving, Dalot as United's main target. There was a lot of stuff that Onana, I think we had a Nana in the March international break that Amrin wanted him gone. A lot of people said he didn't. Obviously, we were proven right on that. This is all from somebody that we have within the club. So basically, what we've been told this morning is that Manchester United, through intermediaries, have held talks with Conor Gallagher about a January transfer move. Now, whether that develops or not, we've got Ben Jacobs on the show at 2 o'clock, so we can ask him. But United have held talks with Conor Gallagher about a potential move in January. Now, let's see. What I would say, the cynic in me, I would say, well, we did try and sign him in the summer. So even just because you hold talks with somebody doesn't mean you're going to get them. I mean, I'd be disgusted if Man United hadn't held talks with Conor Gallagher about a January transfer, because it doesn't mean you do it. You sort of like go, what's the situation? Do they still want a deal? Could you come on loan? Would you be interested? You know, there might be a deal that United like that's completely not possible. I mean, we held public talks with Caicedo in August and we were nowhere near a fee with Brighton, so it didn't happen. So holding talks doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get anywhere. But I suppose, you know, to be honest, it's better than nothing. And look, honestly, I'm just a little bit concerned about what's come out from The Athletic in the last couple of days about United not really looking for anything in January and waiting till the summer. I want to get a bit of a poll going. Would you sign Gallagher in January? I mean, look, for me, I think that there sometimes is a level of, let me choose my words correctly here this Thursday morning, arrogance in our fan base. I think sometimes those standards that we set, sometimes those standards are unrealistic. Like the standards I set about vision, style of football and results might be unrealistic, but I'm not changing those standards because that's where Manchester United should be. We've earned that right to expect Manchester United and the status it has as a football club in world football should be competing for the title. That's where we should be. You know, we're not asking to compete for the Champions League, but we should be competing for the Premier League. It's disgusting how the Glazers have eroded this football club to the level that it's at now, where some people want to say, you know, 8th place is progress. Sorry, no. But in relation to signings, I don't think we can say we should be getting Elliot Anderson. We should be getting the best striker in the world. I don't think with that. I think you've got to earn that, and therefore, I wouldn't look at a Conor Gallagher move in January and say, I don't want that. I mean, obviously, I know what I'd prefer. You'd prefer to go for more expensive, glamorous, I suppose, signings in the sense that, you know, Elliot Anderson would be more glamorous. But Conor Gallagher's got to be better than nothing. and he's got to be better than Mainoo and Ugarte. If Amrin wants Conor Gallagher, you got to go and do it. That's what I'm saying. Amrim's already doing a lot of things you don't like. We're not the manager. So if Amrin wants Conor Gallagher, and clearly he does because he wanted him in the summer, then Man United should do that deal. Regardless of what I or you think, they should do that deal. You know me, I'd be picking Mainoo. Amrin doesn't want to. So it's not about what we think, it's about what the manager wants. And if the manager wants that midfield, we should be all over it. And it's definitely better than nothing. So, look, honestly, I'm not convinced that we're actually going to do anything in January because I think we're run by the Glazers. However, I'd be all over Conor Gallagher coming in January. All over it. If it's Conor Gallagher or nothing, absolutely 100% I would go and do this deal. I think there is... some people have said, well, you know, we did this before with Sabitzer. Sabitzer is very different. Sabitzer is never played in the Premier League before, and Conor Gallagher has. Conor Gallagher's got an outside chance of the World Cup. I think he'd come into a midfield in a Premier League side and be very hungry. I think he'd come into a midfield in a Premier League side and give it 100% every week, which is what he did at Chelsea. I don't think you've got any concerns about that. Ideally, you want this to be a loan deal, but I think it makes a lot of sense for Manchester United. He's still only 25 as well. Like, he's younger than Mason Mount, I think. So he's still only like 25. I just don't know whether United are get. You know what? I think sometimes when it comes to these sort of deals, you can hold talks with intermediaries, you can express interest, but you got to, it almost feels like we won't do this deal because we're not going into it in the right way. We're almost going, well, we'll think about it. Do we really want to do it? And I think you've got to go and commit and go, no, we really want you. We really want you. And I agree with Ladios. He knows the Premier League and he would be good for us in the short term and potentially the long term. I mean, essentially what I'm saying is it's an open goal, isn't it? It's a short-term deal that there's no loss. If it doesn't work out, you work out a deal where you can send him back. If it does work out, you've got a bloody bargain. Like 25 years of age, £25 million. Come on. Premier League proven. And you need a squad. Again, I think this is where we arrogantly go wrong. You do need a squad. Like, you do. Like, even if we did miraculously sign Baleba and Elliot Anderson, then, you're still going to move Casemiro on. God knows what's going to happen with Mainoo. But I can see a world where you had a midfield four of Baleba, Anderson, Gallagher and Mainoo anyway. That's literally what... And what if we sack Amrim? You need a midfield three. So I think four midfielders, we almost don't do ourselves a service sometimes. Like, we need four good midfielders, whether we play a midfield pivot or a midfield three. And Casemiro's gone at some point. Bruno's not a midfielder. Mainoo's career is hanging by a thread, and I think Ugarte's pretty much done. So Conor Gallagher for 25 million, and then you supplement that with Anderson and maybe Baleba as well. If Mainoo stays, you've still only got four. So I think that the arrogance of saying no completely and utterly ignores the fact that we need a major midfield rebuild, and we're not going to spend 80 million or 60 million on every midfielder. And I think Conor Gallagher, first in the door for 25 million or a loan deal, we get a good look at him and he's first in the door. And if he does well, he's part of the squad. I think we need a minimum of four good midfielders and people like maybe Thwaites or Kone or whoever coming through. So I think he's got a good character. I liked him at Chelsea. He's obviously been to Madrid, which I think very few British players go abroad. And I think most players that do go abroad tend to come back, more experienced for it. I think there's a hidden gem there, actually. I'm sort of talking myself into it. But my major concern is, as much as I know the source is very good, my major concern is you can hold talks, but talks don't necessarily go anywhere. And as we saw with Baleba, we held more than talks, and it didn't go anywhere. So are United just paying a bit of lip service here to generate a bit of interest? Because as I said to the person this morning, it's not that I don't believe you, but Manchester United literally mentioned social media interactions to shareholders. If United say we're not buying anyone in January, and United fans know it, the social media interactions go down. Even if they're not going to buy anybody, it's in their interest, and they've done it multiple times to link themselves to players to generate social media interaction. So I don't know. I don't know whether it'll happen, but 77% of you would be happy with Conor Gallagher, and maybe we've worked through that together. Maybe we have, maybe we've worked through that together. But look, as I say, we can ask Ben Jacobs at 2 what he knows about it, but what we're being told is that talks have taken place through intermediaries for Conor Gallagher. Whether they're going to go beyond that into something more permanent probably depends upon Man United's appetite. But if you want to do this deal, for the love of God, please go into it 2-footed. Go into it with, we want you at Man United, and we want you in January, and we want you playing in our team, and we want you to get involved. Because if you want to do the deal, you've got to go and do the deal. Don't go into the deal going, don't know. Because I guarantee you, there will be clubs in the Premier League that do want him, and they'll go in hard for it. So, let's wait and see what happens with it. But give us your thoughts on that. Lots of people talking about Mainoo, free Mainoo, says Dave. Shane P says Mainoo's very overrated. Hamo says free Mainoo. Can I just say, there was a few people yesterday, we spoke about Mainoo yesterday morning, and I'm going to bring the name Mainoo. I may as well bring the Mainoo story in now, actually. We'll bump it up. I was talking about Mainoo yesterday, and how, it's really significant because Amrim's going to be held accountable for this, and playing Bruno in the midfield, and they're 2 big things to get wrong. Also, you've got ex-players telling players to leave, which is very, very big. But I think people are missing the point of what people like Rio Ferdinand, Nicky Butt, me, and some of you are saying about he needs to leave. I think people are missing the point, because regardless of whether you think he's good or not, because a lot of people are in the comments yesterday going, oh, Mainoo's overrated, this, that. That's not the point. The point is, we can't keep him in January. Whether you think he's good or not, we've got to let him go. We're on the same page, but some people still don't figure it out. They're going, he's overrated and he's shit. No, you're not listening. If you think he's overrated and shit, we've still got to let him go in January then, haven't we? Like, we should all be on the same page that Man United, I heard a journalist last night saying, if you're asking me, I think he might stay. That's disgusting. That is sabotaging a career. That is not what Manchester United are all about. And whether you think he's good or shit, we've got to let him go early in January to rescue his career and, bring a replacement in. We can't just go, we don't want you, but we're going to keep you because we're cheap and we can't be asked to replace you. That's disgusting. That's not what Manchester United are all about. So whether you think he's shit or not, we're actually all on the same page. I think he's a good player. He needs to go out and rebuild his career and maybe come back. If you think he's shit, he still needs to be allowed to go and rebuild his career. Same. And yet people don't really understand that. We're both on the same page. Man United are behaving badly in not letting him go because they can't be asked to get a replacement in. He has to be allowed to go no matter who you are. Rajaf says, what's your thoughts on Nicky Butt replacing Wilcox, says Rajaf. I think the club are nurturing Darren Fletcher to be Amrim's replacement, by the way. That's not on any agenda, and I wasn't meant to say that, and maybe I'll let something slip from a conversation this morning, but I think if Amrim gets sacked, Darren Fletcher's the next manager of Man United. Whether you think that's good or not, I think that Project Fletcher has been going on for years. At the start of it, I never understood why Darren Fletcher was at the club. He trained a little bit when he retired, then he had a job, and he's never left. And he's had lots of different jobs at Manchester United. Lots of different jobs. He's been involved in recruitment. He's been involved in, players going from youth to the senior team. He's now a youth team coach. I'm just going to drop it there and leave it. I think the club are nurturing Darren Fletcher to be Man United's next manager. That's all I'm going to say. So if you want Amrim out and you think it's going to be a Glasner or a Iriola, I'd be very confident that they will go to Darren Fletcher as an interim. And then when he does okay, like Ollie, they'll give him the job. So that is where I think they will end up if Amrim ends up going. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, because I didn't answer the question there, Rajaf. Nicky Butt should never have been allowed to leave the club. Every time I hear him, I don't agree with everything Nicky Butt says, by the way. I don't agree with everything Paul Scholes says. I don't agree with everything Roy Keane says. But the more I listen to Nicky Butt and more I read about how he left, we were idiots for doing that. And I think, yet again, I think it's disgusting the way the club have basically shunned and ignored previous success to build their own vision. It's almost like anything to do with the Sir Alex Ferguson era has been shut the door and get rid of it. And I don't really understand that, because, you know, Liverpool and Man City and Chelsea have definitely taken things from our period of success under Sir Alex and brought it into their club, but the club that had that seemed to be ignoring it. Tab says, Amrim is never going to play Cobby in the 8, at least till next season, so let him go, even on loan, let Mainoo go. I completely agree. Give us your thoughts on Conor Gallagher before we go to Mainoo, because we talk about Mainoo a lot, and there is a story about Mainoo coming in from Napoli and their director of football, but this Gallagher story, what are your thoughts on it? You know, if these talks proceed into nothing, are you okay with that? Or if these talks proceed into a move in January, are you happy with that? 76% of you would be happy with Conor Gallagher. Grand Prairie says, glory, glory, Tottenham Hotspur. Good morning from Dallas. Okay. It's me's gifted a membership. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, pal. If you got it, make sure you say thanks. Brian and stuff says, until protests start again, the ownership will never change their ways because there's no jeopardy to their decisions. Managers always take the fall. We can't switch on protests. We can't switch on a takeover bid. But I do agree with you. They are able to do whatever they want with no jeopardy at the moment. You think about it. Imagine if Amrim lost his next 5 games and they decided not to sack him. All you'd get is a bit of moaning on social media. People would still buy season tickets. They'll still buy a new kit. They'll still, you know, turn up. There is no jeopardy at the moment for that ownership at all. You know, we're all part of it, to be fair. Thoughts on Arsenal bringing in another young gem? And here at United, we can't even start Mainoo and can't say when Lacey will play, says Rajaf. Well, ultimately, Arsenal can bring in young players because they've got a ridiculously good squad. They're top of the Premier League and they're top of the Champions League, and they're in a position of authority and confidence where you can give a young player, half an hour in the safe confines of a team that's full of confidence and leaders. At Manchester United, whether we should be giving minutes to Lacey, I think there was an opportunity on Monday night. I don't understand why he didn't take that, by the way. I mean, I haven't mentioned this, actually. I didn't even say it really on Monday night. I don't understand why Lacey's been on the bench 4 or 5 times in the last few weeks. And if you can't give him 20 minutes when you're 4-1 up against the worst Premier League team I've seen, when are you going to give him 20 minutes? So I don't know why we didn't use Lacey on Monday. And I think that goes against Amrim a little bit, if I'm being honest. Where I defend him, though, is you put a young player into that team at the moment. I don't see a lot of nurturing. I don't see a lot of people that are going to be looking out for a young player because they're looking out for themselves, trying to rescue their own careers. So, you know, it's a bit different at Arsenal. But having said that, you know, if you're good enough, you're old enough, and, you know, maybe they're not good enough. Maybe Amrim doesn't bring Lacey on because he doesn't think he's ready, you know? Maybe Arteta plays his players because he thinks they are. I don't have the answer, really. Tab says, United have ignored midfield stability for too long. Since Scholes retired, we've not sorted the midfield out. No, exactly. And this is why I mean, like, I think we need at least 3 midfielders. Like, Agarte, I can't see him turning it around. Casemiro's going to go. Bruno's never going to be a midfielder. So you need 3. And that's if Mainoo stays. If Mainoo doesn't stay, you need 4. So all this talk about one big signing in the summer is laughable. What are we going to do? Buy Elliot Anderson and keep Bruno and Casemiro and Agarte? Come on. 3 summer windows to build the squad is a joke, says Paul Thompson. Good morning, sir. He says, Cunha, Mbeumo, De Ligt, Martinez, Mount and Mazraoui will be pushing 30. Always a sinking ship. Funky says, what do you think about the Sergio Ramos rumours? I think football's for everybody, and even on the watch along on That's Football last night, I had multiple people asking me about this, and I suppose there's just there's no entry test in football, but Ineos have made it very clear they don't want to buy players over 27 and they don't want to pay big wages. So why would we buy a 39-year-old who's 40 this season and give him big wages? I mean, it's preposterous. It won't happen. Chip says, I think Gallagher is a lot like João Gomez. Professional, hard-working, but not very good on the ball. I don't want him to be a starter. He's not good enough. Thank you very much, Chip. Thanks for giving us your opinion. Outcast is a new member. Thank you very much for joining the members club and getting your badge in. Appreciate that. And Marlo's in the house. Hope you're doing well, Marlo. He says, I'm all for an honest manager. The problem with Amrim is that he goes hard on the youngsters but lets the experienced players off the hook. To me, that is proof of weak mentality and poor leadership. Well, I've never really looked at it like that. But so what you're basically saying, Marlo, is that this manager is a coward. I'll say it. I mean, that's how I interpret your comment, that you're saying he's a coward. He finds it easier to go after young, inexperienced people who don't have a footing in the game, but the experienced players, he's scared of them. He did drop Casemiro for the first 6 weeks. He got rid of Rashford. So, I don't know. I don't know that he's a coward. I think he's terrified of doing anything to Bruno Fernandes. I do. I think he was scared of selling him. And, you know, I think he shoehorned him into the team rather than playing him in his best position. But I think Bruno Fernandes has been running that club for a long time, really. You know, not in the sense that Bruno turns up and says, I'm the boss. I just think he's the most powerful player in the football club. He's the captain. And I think you're not going to drop him. And Amrim's clearly not going to drop him, even though there might have been opportunities to do it. I think Amrim, you know, Bruno's our best player. There's no doubt about that. But there has been performances where he should have been dropped. I thought the Everton game, he was atrocious and should have been dropped. But he won't drop Bruno. So I don't think he's a coward, Marlo. I think it's easier to publicly humiliate a young player than it is to do it to a senior player. I mean, look at what Slot's going through with Salah. You know, that's a Liverpool legend who is deservedly dropped, who then decides he's going to speak to the media, not even through social media, just I'm going to go out and talk to the media and slag the club off. So, you know, if you are going to drop a senior player, sometimes it can backfire massively and you lose your job. So maybe he's not a coward. Maybe he's just, you know, tactical in the sense that, you know, he knows that if he goes against the senior players, he's going to lose the dressing room and lose his job. Whereas the younger players, he can hold them to account and hope that the senior players listen. Maybe it's about that. Tony Whitehead says, Gallagher's last season, 37 starts, 5 goals, 7 assists, 7.5 average rating, 2.3 tackles and 1.2 interceptions a game. Captain, top ball winner, criminally underrated. I'll take a bit of that. Because in the short term, we need a bit of that. And in the long term, we need that in our midfield pool. So I'd definitely take a bit of that. You know what? I like Conor Gallagher. I never really... Chelsea's not my club, but I did think it was a bit bad that they got rid of him just to make a bit of money. But we might be heading down that road anyway. I think that's why we are buying all these young players to sell him. I'll only take Conor on a loan, nothing more, says Ghost. And I think we will spend the whole of January trying to sign Gallagher. We won't get him, then waste time trying to sign him in the off-season. The United way, says Isaac. I'm on the fence about Amrim, says Jared. One hand, getting rid of another manager is wrong, but at the same time, picking Bruno as an 8 is also stupid, but I hope it works out, says Jared. I'd love to see United get Conor Gallagher in January because Amrim wants him, and then I'd love to see what Amrim does with Conor Gallagher, because I think he'd go straight into the team next to Bruno. I saw a stat yesterday that Sam Johnson for Wolves was our 6th academy graduate to start against us this season while we've used none. It's shocking, says Chizzy. Mate, I know it's nothing to do with Amrim, but it is to do with Ineos. People blame Ten Hag, but Ineos could have stopped it. What were we doing with Alvaro? What were we doing with Alvaro? I mean, bloody hell. You know, he's going to get better as well. I rated him at Man United as well, so I'm not going to let that slip. I remember the summer, before we knew we were going to let him go to Benfica, somebody said, who do you think is going to be the breakout player for Man United from the youth? Because there always is one. And I said, I think it'll be Alvaro. Within a couple of weeks, we got rid of him to Benfica. I saw it in him. And I think a lot of people did. He's powerful, he's big, and he's got a lovely touch, and he's very physical. I don't know how we misprofiled him. I don't know. And people blame Ten Hag, but look, there are other people at that football club. And let's not forget, Ten Hag was on the skin of his teeth. He nearly got sacked before that decision. So I don't think Erik Ten Hag at that point was in a position where he could go, get rid of Alvaro, and everyone would go, certainly, Erik. I mean, Erik didn't want McTominay to go and we sold him, and he didn't want Ugarte and we bought him. So Ineos were very active in that summer transfer window that we let Alvaro go. And I see a lot of people blaming Ten Hag, but when you analyse that summer transfer window, Ineos were very hands-on. Very hands-on. And I think at that point, Ten Hag had lost his veto as well. So, look, Alvaro may have wanted to leave, like Fozzie said, but I don't think he would have wanted to leave to go to Benfica over being given opportunities at Manchester United in the Premier League. And I think we messed up. We definitely messed up. But there's nothing we can do about it now. Daniel Thompson says, I hope you're well, Mark, and the United Stand crew. I think Gallagher on loan is better than nothing. I'd try for Stiller in January, Anderson and Wharton in the summer, loan Mainoo in January. I'd be on board with everything you've said there. Everything you've said there. Mick says, something's got me started this morning. I think academy players like Mainoo are holding back the years. We need more, but money's too tight to mention. Jordan says, Gallagher's pish. Wasn't Gallagher dropped for Mainoo in the Euros? Says Aaron. Probably. Probably. I wouldn't have thought you were wrong on that. Technically, I think you're probably right. Alvaro would be amazing at left wing back. What a shame, says Jacob. It's just so annoying when you look at Man United, actually, over the last couple of years, when we actually had certain players in our grasp. I mean, even Mainoo, 2 years ago, you'd go, that's the midfield sorted. Alvaro, that would be left wing back sorted. If we hadn't sold De Gea, we wouldn't have had the problems we've had in goal. We've actually been in possession of players that we've let go, that or we've subdued, that could have solved issues that we have in that team now. But, you know. Let me talk to you about Mainoo anyway, because interestingly, there is a story coming out this morning from Napoli's, I think it's Napoli's sporting director. Napoli's director of sporting director, Giovanni Marna, admits they will make the right evaluations over Man United midfielder Kobbie Mainoo in January. He said, and this is their sporting director, he said he's a player who has been linked to Napoli since August, also for his age, his potential and the transfer opportunity. The team is doing well. It is consolidated. We have some important absences right now, but sooner or later those lads will return strong and determined. We have to make the right evaluations, so we'll see how things progress along the way. So to me, that's very much a statement of interest from Napoli, obviously acknowledging that, you know, there was interest there in August, that they like him, and they like the opportunity, and they like his age profile, I think what Napoli are saying there is we'll evaluate it as and when it becomes a possibility in January. So Mainoo apparently wants Napoli. Obviously, he'd know Rasmus and McTominay. And they've done relatively well at that club. So I think, look, the thing with Mainoo is this. Some people think he's crap. We should want to move him on. Some of us think he's good, but we're not using him. So let's move him on. There is a real opportunity in Italy for him to go and play football. Personally, I'd rather he stayed in the Premier League, but I think United don't want to be embarrassed. So we need to let him go in January. And there's literally no logic to not letting him go, apart from we can use it as an excuse not to bring a midfielder in. Because when you think about it, this is a player that Amrim doesn't want to use, who is decreasing in value by the minute. But the minute he goes to Napoli, starts playing and does well, his price starts to increase by the minute. So as an asset, you've got to increase the value of the asset. Therefore, you have to let him go in January. I'm sure Amrim would agree with this. I'm sure Mainoo would agree with this. And I'm sure all the fan base would agree with this. But the reason it might not happen, and the only reason it might not happen, is because Man United might be saying to Amrim, we're not getting a midfielder in January, in which case Amrim will say, well, he can't go because I've only got 3 midfielders then. And that's not enough. And I'd rather keep a player that I don't want to use but would use in an emergency than have him not here. And that comes down to the club. So for me, Mainoo should be leaving the first week of January. But whether that happens or not feeds into whether we'd go for Conor Gallagher or not. When did we sign Dorgu? That'll predict January window, says Cron. I feel we signed Dorgu late in the January transfer window. I feel that we did, yeah. But with regards to Dorgu, I mean, hopefully he can turn things around. He's still very young. He's still a prospect. But it's very obvious now that Dalot's our left wing back, which, look, a lot of people are saying, well, he scored a goal against West Ham and he got an assist against Wolves. So, you know, he's doing a good job at the moment. I can't tell you how embarrassing it is that we're using a mid right back as our left wing back. I mean, if that's not a plaster on an open wound, I don't know what it is. The only reason Dalot does well is because no one bloody marks him anyway. Even the opposition don't respect him. The amount of times nobody marks him. I mean, against West Ham, how is he not being marked? But obviously the West Ham defence have gone, it's Dalot. So I think it's embarrassing that we're using Dalot as a left wing back, even if he's playing well. And I've given him 2 good ratings against Wolves and West Ham, so I'm not saying he hasn't played well. But it doesn't mean it's not a plaster on an open wound. He's not a very good right back, and he's certainly not a left wing back. So, you know, it's just another stopgap, isn't it? And how many stopgaps have we got in that team at the moment? Luke Shaw's a stopgap. There's no future in that. Casemiro's a stopgap. There's no future in that. Bruno is being shoehorned in out of position, so that's stopgap. Dalot is stopgap. You know, you're approaching nearly half your fucking team. Kay says, Bruno's got more ball recoveries than Casemiro and Caicedo. He's second in the Premier League. At this point, any other midfielder apart from Anderson will be a downgrade. Mate, I hope that's a joke, because if you're going to come in here with stats over the eye test, then you're just going to get laughed out, mate. I mean, we can all find a stat. I mean, you know, Bruno might be good at interceptions, but I'll get a little compilation tape and show you 5 goals that we've conceded this season because he can't track runners. So talk about ball recoveries all you bloody well like. He's cost us multiple goals because he's not a midfielder. He's out of position all the time. He's indisciplined. So he's not a midfielder. I don't care about your stats. Not a midfielder. I miss Manchester United, says Pat. Gallagher won't work when Bruno is unpredictable, says John. Loads of player misprofiling at Man United. Fellaini in the 6, Bruno as a winger or 8, McTominay as a centre-back or a centre midfielder. We could buy Gallagher and play him incorrectly, says Tab. And Seth says, young players at United get arrogant after a few shiny moments. Recent example, Garnacho. Whilst I don't agree with Mainoo's situation, I do see a pattern. I think it's very unfair to somebody did it yesterday. I think it's very unfair to question Mainoo's mentality and character because we've had zero evidence that there are any problems with him like that. And I think if there was, we would know about it. So I don't think that's fair. Tommy Asu on a free? No. Remain? Absolutely not. I think we'll spend the whole January Isaac says, I think we'll spend that. I think we did that one. Yeah, we did that one from Isaac as well. Right, I want to move on because I want to quickly talk about this new update that's come in around Joshua Zirkzee and also a younger player as well, Austrian centre-back. AC Milan have already made contact with super agent Kia, I can never pronounce his name, Jorabchin, in recent weeks about Zirkzee's situation at United. That's coming in from Italy. And then also, Gazzetta dello Sport says that Roma have officially opened negotiations to sign Netherlands forward Zirkzee on loan with an obligation to buy for 30 million. The 24-year-old has scored 1 goal this season and reportedly wants to stay at the Red Devils. So I found that update quite interesting because obviously we got the update last night that United want to keep Zirkzee. But if Roma come in and want to give us £30 million obligation to buy, is that deal back on again now? And the honest answer is, you just don't know. You just don't know with United, do you? You just don't know, because if someone's willing to give us money, anybody's for sale. You know, even Bruno, I know we kept him, but we let him have talks because we were like, there's money there. So I don't think there's a player in the Man United squad that's not for sale if somebody offers the right money. And I think that's the interesting thing about that update. I think Zirkzee will stay. I think it's logical he stays till the summer. How would we replace him if he left. However, I think if Roma were thinking about coming in and offering a loan deal, you may as well not bother picking up the phone. But if Roma are going to offer a loan deal where we make profit, which we would make profit, 30 million back in our pocket when we paid 35 for him 2 years ago, maybe Man United are looking at that and going, you know, we might be interested in that. I still don't think it'll be enough to make us do something in January. However, the story doesn't look like it's going to go away again, does it? Can someone get Arne Slot a new 5-year deal, says Irish Dominator. What's all the fuss about Ramos to United, says Chris. Also, Daniel says, any truth in the Sergio Ramos story? I don't know whether I'm on my own here, but I've got absolutely no interest in talking about this Sergio Ramos story. And I don't know whether some people are just having a slow Thursday, but it's a load of horse shit. I don't want him anywhere near Man United. It's a load of horse shit. He's 40 in February. We don't... Why would that be exciting? What... You know, PVR, Performance Vision Results. Why would we go and buy a player that's got nothing to do with the vision and is short term? We're not trying to win the league. If you're trying to win the league and Sergio Ramos can give you 3 months of leadership, maybe you bring him in. But why? I don't even... There's nothing about Ramos that's exciting either. I just won't go anywhere near it. Absolutely nonsense. But you're not the first to have asked me today. A lot of people are asking about it, and I just don't get why it's not being laughed out the park. As Gaz United says, is Ramos even still playing? Bruno has cost us goals, bench him for Mainoo, says Aman. And why does every player that leaves United suddenly become very good? Is this club really that bad, says Macedonian. Point to prove. Point to prove. Point to prove is a very powerful thing in life and in football. Point to prove is huge. Having said that, is Garnacho doing well at Chelsea? I mean, he's the biggest mouth point to prove in the world. I mean, his interviews sound like he's doing really well. His performance on the pitch isn't that good. And, you know, there might be some Chelsea fans saying he's done okay. Trust me, bruv, I expected Garnacho to do a lot better than okay. The way he was walking around in the Villa top, giving it the big un, you know, I expected Garnacho to really... I didn't expect him to do it for long, but I did expect Garnacho to do a lot better in the first 4 months because I actually think he's quite talented. But I know a few Chelsea fans and they're going, oh, he's doing okay. And I'm like, I really think he had such a big point to prove. I was expecting better than okay. I was expecting a couple of worldies, really 100% top of his game for a few weeks. I didn't think he'd be able to keep it up, but I did think he'd do it. I think he's been pretty average. Obviously, Rashford's done well at Barcelona. He's in a fantastic side. Half of that league is not going to be as good as the Premier League is, and also it's a slower league. And we saw what Rashford did against Porto for us at the start of last season. He's out on that wing, getting the ball quickly. They don't really like direct pace in that league. So I'm not surprised by Rashford, and that's good for us anyway. Rasmus has done okay. I wouldn't say Rasmus has been amazing. He's had some good games and he's had some bad games, but he's done okay. And I think he'd have done okay for us if we kept him. McTominay we misprofiled. He was never a holding midfielder and we never used him in his right position. Wan-Bissaka has done well at West Ham and did well at Man United. We made a choice. I preferred Dalot over Wan-Bissaka. I put my hands up. A lot of people did. Who else is there though? You know, I think point to prove is part of the thing. And also some of these players... Well, we knew McTominay was a 10. They use him as a 10. We knew Wan-Bissaka was okay, and he's been good at West Ham. You know, Rashford on the left wing when he's focused, he's a good player. But the journeys had ended at Man United. They needed a fresh challenge. Left back is our curse. Alvaro, Tellez, Williams, Reguilon, and so on have all tried and been found not good enough, but somehow Shaw is still here, says Slazy. Thank you very much for that. Just another story to bring you this morning. I've heard this a few times, so I just want to bring it in just in case it happens. A few people have been talking about this over the last few days. Manchester United are interested in Austrian Elche centre-back David Affengruber. His composure, aerial strength and ability to step into the midfield have drawn comparisons with a young Dalot and is seen as an ideal long-term partner for Lenny Yoro. He started all but one game for promoted Elche in 25-26. That's coming in from Team Talk, but I've read it elsewhere as well. But in addition to that, there's also a story coming out this morning that Man United are in talks with Liga de Quito to sign Edison Castillo, along with several other clubs, including Atletico Madrid, Bayern Munich and Anderlecht. Manchester United see Castillo as a mix of Kante and Pogba. I mean, are we not getting tired of this now? You know, we bought a lad the other day who they see as the next Caicedo. We've now seen somebody who's going to be the next Pogba and Kante. We're looking at another kid at centre-back. And people start saying Favel's cooking, right? Or whatever. I'm sure Christopher Favel is very good at his job, but I'm starting to get a little bit wary of this now because we've already got Obi and Kone, what's happening with them. There are a few others we've bought that people have forgotten. We are on quite a familiar treadmill now of buying 16, 17-year-olds, saying they're going to be the next superstar, and then what happens with them? Are we bringing these people in at such volume to sell them for profit? Or are we bringing them in because they're going to be the next Kante, Pogba in our midfield in 3 years' time? The jury's out. The jury's out on that because I just remember being told back in April that Man United are obsessed with Chelsea. Specifically, Ineos are obsessed with Chelsea. And I look at Chelsea and they're, you know, Chelsea are obsessed with buying young players. To what end? I look at Chelsea and I go, they fell off in the last 2 weeks. They had a really good performance against Arsenal with 10 men, and then they fell off because they lack leadership experience to kick on. And when are they going to get that? When they keep buying younger players. And I look at United and we're buying all these younger players and we're always being linked with these younger players. But unlike Chelsea, we don't actually give a platform for people like Cole Palmer, etc., to go in and progress. So it's all right being obsessed with the Chelsea model, and it's all right buying loads and loads of young players, but you've got to nurture them young players. And I don't see any evidence that we're capable of doing that. So whilst it's exciting to bring lots of young players in, trust me, as somebody who saw the class of 92 develop at Man United, they didn't, and they, you know, we're talking 5, 6 really good players there. They didn't just get thrown into a shit team. They got thrown in gradually to a team that had a multitude of experienced winner leaders. And even if we had the next class of 92 now, I don't think they would develop to the players they became because they don't have that environment and nurturing and experience around them. So it's all right buying all these younger players, but where's the experienced players that's actually going to, you know, teach them? Because the best one in the world, Harry Maguire, Bruno Fernandes, can give them some advice, but they can't give them advice on, on the pitch. They don't nurture players on the pitch. They're not born winners on the pitch. So I do start to question why we're buying so many young players when we're not a club that actually nurtures players. And some people might say we're not even a club that gives young players a chance at the moment. So there's a bit of a contradiction. It could iron itself out over the next 2 years, but at the moment it's all right buying these next Kantes or these next Caicedos. Brilliant. But where's the opportunity in the first team? And if they get the opportunity, where are the players that are actually going to help them? And that needs to be solved as well. You know, and maybe Mbeumo and Dalot and Cunha and Ahmad become those players. You know, maybe they do. Yabba dabba do. But you can't just buy young players and go, we're going to be a good team in 5 years, because Chelsea are proof that that doesn't happen. Chelsea is still crying out for 2 experienced players in that team if they want to win the Premier League or the Champions League. Bring in young, send on loan, build reputation, sell at profit. It's all about cash, says Keel. And that's what worries me a little bit. I think it might be a money-making exercise, because if there's one thing that runs through that football club, it's not what Man United's all about anymore. It's about where do we make money. and they are mercenary enough to do that. I don't see the point in bringing. I don't see the point of bringing in Gallagher when we already have a better midfielder in Mainoo. Amrim's stubbornness will be his undoing, says Rob, always United. We've actually answered the question, Rob. Many people don't see the point in bringing Gallagher in if you've got Mainoo, but there is a massive point in bringing Gallagher in if Amrim rates Gallagher more than Mainoo and actually will use him. There's no point not getting Gallagher and keeping Mainoo if you've got Amrim in charge who doesn't want to use Mainoo. So that's the answer, yeah. If you were the manager, there wouldn't be any point by the sounds of it. But if Amrim's the manager, there's every point. Post-loan, Mainoo could surpass Caicedo levels, says Kai. How would you spend the 200 million in the summer? Kai, I don't know what you're on about this morning. I'm just reading out your comments. I'm seeing a lot of stats on X hyping up Bruno, says Rajaf. But you know what? That's X, mate. Man United win a game. Look, the cult of Bruno is never going to shut up. As soon as he has a good game, they're out there. As soon as he has a bad game, they disappear. It's called Player FC. Bruno Fernandes as a number 10, let's play. Bruno Fernandes as a midfielder, forget it. But so, if people are doing compilations and recoveries and everything like that. The thing is, right, what people cannot deal with is the undisputable. And what cannot be disputed is that across this season, Bruno has had about 8 shit games. So over half our Premier League games, he's had a shit game. In the remaining games, he's had a really good game. But the good things he did aren't what a midfielder does, they're what a number 10 does. You look at Palace, 2 really good assists from free kicks. He could do that as a 10. You look at Wolves, everything he did, he could do as a 10. There's not really anything he's done as a midfielder that you go, that's why he's in the midfield. So that's the conversation that people don't want to have. Bruno is our best player. But everything good he does happens in the number 10 position, not in the midfield position. And everything that makes him have a bad performance is what he does in midfield. And everything that makes him man of the match is what he does in the number 10 position. So play him as a number 10. And that's what some people can't understand because they're so far up Bruno's arse, they just want to pretend he's a good midfielder. But actually, he's a very good number 10, and that's where he should be, and he's not a very good midfielder. In my opinion. Will Martinez be a... Oh, God, John, I'm getting tired now. Kai says the best player in the world right now is playing for United. Should we just ignore Kai? I think we'll make a democratic decision. It's making me want to stop the stream. What's all the foot? I've done that one. Can someone... Okay, I've done that one as well. Mark, if you had to sell in Burmo or Ahmad to bring in 2 midfielders, who would you choose, says Salah? I'm not answering that question. It's so provocative and never going to happen. I'm not, you know what? I normally answer anything, but I'm not answering that because all that does is give a public statement of I'd sell Ahmad or Mbeumo in a situation where it's never going to happen. I'll answer this question, Salah. Who would I pick between Mbeumo or Ahmad if I had to pick one and bench one? I would pick, at the moment, Mbeumo. Simply because I prefer Mbeumo as a player. But I really like Ahmad as well. And I tell you what, I was watching the 2 o'clock show yesterday with Beth. Who would be your front 3? I was really enjoying it. My front 3 at the moment would probably not be your front 3, right? My front 3 at the moment would be Cunha as the left 10, Bruno as the right 10, and Mbeumo as striker. And people are going to go, what about Xisco? What about Mount? But it's my front 3. I want Bruno as a 10, and I think he does ridiculous work from there that is massively creative. So I'd have Bruno as the right side 10. I really like Cunha, left-sided 10. And I think if you move Bruno out the midfield, Cunha would actually get ball into feet and be even better. And I actually think Mbeumo as a striker would work really well because he's really quick. He makes really intelligent runs. And we're not actually using Xisco right anyway. We don't put crosses into the box. So people say Mbeumo's not big enough to be a striker. But I actually think his mobility and movement and link-up play make him perfect to be a striker in our team. So that would be my front three. I actually think the team is just so obvious. I think the team should be Mainoo next to Casemiro, Bruno next to Cunha, and then Burmo as the striker. That's what I would do. I think it's just bloody obvious. But especially in relation to the way we play, I don't think it's ever going to happen. By the way, but that's what my front three would be at the moment. Keel says, I'm all for fans celebrating a win, but our fans bantering about beating Wolves is embarrassing, says Keel. Why won't you leave your wife for me, says official Margot Robbie. Not at Christmas. Mark, if you have done that one as well, and all three can interchange their position, it'd be so fluid, says Savage. What about Mason Mount, says Kuhn? Well, he can only play half our games anyway, so we'll stick him on the bench and start him every now and again. But, you know, I'm not going into that Mason Mount conversation because I just think the facts of the situation sit down. Anybody saying that Mount should be our starter, he can't do it. He can't do it. It's a fact of science. It's medical. It's a medical fact. He cannot play 90 minutes every game. He can't do it. So I don't put Mason Mount in any team for the future because I've got no reason to think he can be part of our future. Who would Ruben bench for Gallagher? Says Simply Red. Well, I don't think he'd get benched. I don't think any player goes straight into that midfield straight away. I mean, there's an adjustment period, but it wouldn't be for Bruno. It would be for Casemiro, of course it would. And I think that Casemiro, I don't think has even played that well recently as well. Anyway, look, great show this morning. Let's see what happens. We've got Ben Jacobs on the show at 2 as well, so we'll get straight into him about this Conor Gallagher story, see what he's hearing. We'll also ask him about Zirkzee, the strikers, what's happening with the midfield, etc., and a few other bits as well. So, official Margot Robbie says, fine, after New Year's then, see you soon. Okay, enough internet today. Thanks everyone for watching. We're back in the 8 o'clock show tonight as well. 8 o'clock show live tonight. So I'll see you then. But we've got Ben Jacobs at 2 o'clock, which I will definitely be in the chat for because I want to know what's going on. Speak to you in a bit. Take care. Please do smash the like button. We've not even hit 1,000 likes. Again, this is getting really bad. Like, we've got 7,000 watching and we can't even hit 1,000 likes. Come on. You're here. Smash a like. Take care. Speak to you in a bit.